A good piece of Redshirt news, but one that I was not expecting, and it involves that man, Jackson Shelstad.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a bonus episode of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Jackson Shelstad, Dez Lindsay, two different players to talk about here. A fascinating development potentially on both fronts. This episode brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Birthday cake flavor is back. No fork needed. Vanilla-y, cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Have your cake and drink it too now at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. So I want to start with Jackson Shelstad. Then in the second segment, I will get to Dez Lindsay. So Dana Altman was recently speaking. I think this was actually ahead of the Wisconsin game. He was doing a post-game, or not necessarily post-game, post-practice, press availability. Irrelevant. He was talking about Dez Lindsay, who got approved for a medical redshirt, which makes perfect sense. I've spoken at length mostly on Locked On College Football, but on this show as well, that the extended eligibility, man, it goes overboard sometimes. But Dez Lindsay is a pretty clear-cut case. And he played 3 different seasons. He missed all of last year with an injury. He's played this year for the Ducks, so should be getting another year, and indeed he is. Now, what was surprising was Dana Altman indicated that Oregon is going after another year of eligibility via a medical redshirt for Jackson Shelstad. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up about this. The reason is that he is over the limit. It's just not by a lot. The hard line that is set, well, I don't know if anything's ever a hard line when it comes to the NCAA. Things can be rather fungible. The number of games you're typically allowed to play to get a medical redshirt is 9. 9 games. Shelstad has appeared in 12. Now, he got hurt before the season began. Then he came back, was of course impactful. Oregon wasn't winning just yet. They would certainly have more wins now if he'd been healthy throughout the year. Same goes for Nate Biddle, who played great against Wisconsin the other day. But Shelstad played in 12 games, and Dana Altman said, well, I don't know if they'll get it. I know he's a little bit over, but we're going to try. That was more than a little surprising to me for a couple reasons. Number one, because he's over the limit, but number two, it means that Jackson Shelstad would at least be open to playing at Oregon for 2 more years. This would be, amidst the announcement that we heard, not announcement, but a report from someone over at ESPN that Oregon's committed to Dana Altman for next year. This would be a huge, I mean huge revelation if you could lock in Jackson Shelstad for 2 more years. And he's a guy who has idolized Peyton Pritchard, who's crushing it with the Boston Celtics, by the way. I'm sure Shelstad looks at him and says to himself, I'd also like to be in the NBA one day. But remember, Peyton Pritchard played for 4 years at Oregon. Maybe Shelstad wants to do the same. Maybe he's on the smaller side. Pritchard's not a big guy either, and Shelstad's actually a better athlete. I think Pritchard's a better overall player, but Shelstad is very good in a lot of different ways and has more athleticism than Pritchard does. But I didn't even think about the idea. Like I had written off in my head, this is just a lost season for Jackson Shelstad, and that sucks because he's a Westland kid, which, you know, I forgive him. I forgive him as a Lake Oswego guy. But he's an in-state recruit, one of the highest rated in the last several years, probably the best guy to come out of Westland since Peyton Pritchard, and he's just been awesome ever since he set foot on campus. And so when I heard that they were going after a year, that means that Shelstad's thinking, well, I might play for for 2 more years. And that might be in my best interest. And look, I'm a proponent of guys spending more time in college because it's almost always beneficial. There's rarely an example. I'm sure there are a few. There's rarely an example, especially in college basketball, of a guy playing another year at the collegiate level and it goes poorly for him. It doesn't work out. It stunts his growth. Really, the only bad thing that can happen is an injury, which can, of course, happen to you at the next level as well. So I hadn't even had that thought in my mind. I was assuming, Shelstad off an injury is not going to go into the NBA draft. But Jackson Shelstad for the next 2 years, well, that's a foundational piece for Dana Altman if he's trying to get the program back to the NCAA tournament. And I again, don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Obviously, there's got to be an example or a case to be made. Somebody somewhere thinks that it is at least worth exploring and applying for a waiver. And there's a world where Jackson Shelstad plays 2 more years of basketball at Oregon. That would be fantastic. And he's one of the most important pieces that you, of course, have to have coming back going into next season, because you're going to lose Nate Biddle after this year. There's going to be a lot of roster turnover, I suspect, with how the season has gone. Dez Lindsay might be one of those guys who is back, you would think, after that process, and I'll touch on him later. But this is a really, really big development for Dana Altman and company, and if they can get Shelstad back for 2 more years, it is absolutely in the best interest of both sides. And look, I'd place it at a 3.5 on the SSA that it actually gets approved. I've seen crazier. There was also a pretty solid case for N'Faly Dante to get a medical red shirt and another year of eligibility, and the NCAA didn't give it to him. Why? I don't really know. This sort of stuff, it's really hard to predict what the NCAA is going to do. So we just sit and wait and watch and hope that there's still 2 more seasons worth of Jackson Shelstad basketball to be played in Oregon. That would be great. There is, in all likelihood, 1 more year of Dez Lindsay. He is a very important marker as we look ahead to next year. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. It is time for the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft Big Board. Roll the music. Bam, 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 bada, bam, bam, bam. With the first pick in the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft, I am going with strawberry watermelon. I am a fruit-flavored guy all the way. The wild berry combo, that's fantastic. My biggest sleeper out there is sour apple. And there are all sorts of flavors of 5 Hour Energy that you can check out as well, because they've got a wide variety. If you're more into the sweet camp of a 5 Hour Energy shot, then guess what? They've got birthday cake. They've got that vanilla-y, cakey sort of flavor. You just have to go and check them out. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. The biggest stretch of the college basketball season is almost here. Unfortunately, Oregon's not going to be a part of it unless Dana Altman pulls a just wild, insane rabbit. That's the word I was looking for. That type of miracle out of the hat. But being there live for other types of college basketball games, that is bucket list stuff. The hard part is always actually getting tickets. I literally just bought tickets before I sat down to record this show on Game Time. Why? Because I know they're going to give me everything I want. I'm getting a great deal. I mean, a fantastic deal for the event that I am going to. Got 3 tickets, save money compared to other ticketing services. You're going to see a view from your seat so you know what to expect. You get all-in pricing. That's my favorite part. The Game Time guarantee means 100% legitimate tickets delivered on time at the best price. Take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Finally, this episode brought to you by our friends at Coast. Coast Pay is giving Locked On College listeners up to $2,000 credit for your business when you get started today. If you manage a crew, whether it's construction, HVAC, landscaping, any operation with trucks on the road, you already know how messy gas and material spending can get. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, and month end turns into a headache. Coast Pay fixes all of that. Coast Pay is the modern fuel card and expense management tool built specifically for fleets. Fuel, maintenance, materials, all in one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens. No surprises. If someone fuels up at an odd time or tries to buy something outside their limit, you will know instantly. Right now, CoastPay is offering our listeners up to $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastpay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to $2,000 credit. Terms apply. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts are subject to credit approval. Check them out at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. So Dez Lindsay this year, after missing last season entirely with an injury, has played in, I think, every game or close to every game, has started a couple for Oregon this year, and is one of several players, Wayland being the most notable other example, that's really progressed from where he was at the beginning of the season. He's averaging 5.5 points and 3 rebounds a game, shooting 35% from 3, only 58% from the line, which is not great, and 42.5% from the field. So his numbers have not been anything special. He hit a big 3, and it was probably the toughest shot I've ever seen him make late in the game against Wisconsin. And when that went down, I kind of realized in my head, oh, okay, Oregon's actually going to win this basketball game, which is crazy, but also representative of the fact that, yeah, they could have been better this year. But Lindsay was approved for a medical redshirt. And here's why I say he's an important marker for next year. I mentioned the progress, which I think is absolutely worth pointing out. And I'm totally fine if Dana Altman wants to bring Dez Lindsay back. He loves his JUCO guys. He always has. Lindsay has one of the highlights of the year with the dunk he had against Minnesota, was just an absolute jackhammer after he parachuted up to the rafters. It was awesome. Truly, truly awesome. And a season that hasn't had many highlights, well, at least there was that one. He's very athletic, can play defense, rebounds well, gets out in transition. Not a full-on 3-and-D guy because his three-point shooting got off to a slow start. It's come around in the second half of the season, but he's not a guy that's going to create his own shot. And why do I say he's an important marker? Because one thing I've talked about a lot with this team is the talent deficit that they face compared to other teams in the Big Ten or across their non-conference schedule as well. You just look at the players on the floor, even when Shelstad was healthy, and you go, there are not many guys that the other team would want from Oregon to start for them. It's really Shelstad, Evans, and Biddle. That's been it. And KJ Evans, frankly, who's also made significant strides this year, don't know how many other teams that are good he might start. It depends on what the forward situation is. Anyway, I'm super down for Dez Lindsay to come back as a bench player. If this is the marker component that I referenced earlier. If Oregon goes into next season and undergoes an entire offseason, and the end result is Dez Lindsay is a starting 2 or a starting 3, then the offseason has been a failure. He is not that caliber of player. He's a high energy, high motor guy, brings traits I'm super up for off the bench. He's, of course, got proven production. It'll be his 3rd year in the system. All those things are good and fine. He's not someone that should be a starting wing for a serious Big Ten team. So while I'm glad he got the medical redshirt, I can't imagine after going through the process right now and the fact that he, stayed with Oregon after being hurt and the way that this season has gone for him, playing more and more in the last few weeks. He's had a handful of starts this season. I can't imagine he would come back and want to go somewhere else. I really can't. Then again, last year I thought Bam Tracy would be back. Gosh, this team could have used Bam Tracy. Could have used a lot more, but Bam Tracy would have been a player on this team because he can shoot. And Oregon has had a distinct lack of shooting for long stretches of this season. So Dez Lindsay, thumbs up. Bench play. Like if Oregon's got a good team next year, Dez Lindsay is your, at best, 7th best player, probably your 8th or 9th. If he is, well, then you got a good team. But there's a lot of work this offseason. You're going to lose Nate Biddle. Hopefully you get KJ Evans back and you can say, okay, start Evans, start Shelstad, and then you need to go find guys that are as good or better than those two players to fill in around them. And then guys like Dez Lindsay or Waylon need to become bench pieces at that point. That will be a roster that I'll get excited about again. So that's why I say Dez Lindsay is a marker going forward. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.